introduce our first speaker from Ghent, Belgium. This is Vincent Meerschaert. Did I get your surname correct?
Yes, very well.
More or less. Yes, so Vincent, the stage or the webinar is all yours. I will continue talking to you right after the presentation, and I look forward to it. So the stage is all yours.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. I hope you can see my, my screen at the moment.
We can. Everything is working great.
Okay, thanks for the introduction in Slovenian. I didn't get a clue, but I'm sure it was very interesting and warming up for...
Oh yeah, it was full of compliments, Vincent.
Okay. No, thanks again for the invitation. It's a pleasure to share with you some of our experiences in Belgium and Ghent. Maybe I start with a small introduction of myself. So my name is, as you pronounced it perfectly, Vincent Meerschaert. I'm director of Traject. We are a mobility consultancy based in Belgium. I guess you know it's like Slovenia, one of the smaller countries in Europe. And I live and work, and our offices are in Ghent. It's a medieval town. It's worth a visit if you haven't visited yet. So it's a nice town. I've studied here. I have a background in sociology and economics, and yeah, as a lot of students, I like the city and I stayed here forever. I also like hiking, and I'm sure some of you recognize the summit of Triglav mountain last spring. So I enjoy being outside, hiking, cycling. I have one wife and 3 daughters, who fortunately for family life also like to bike. So let's say I'm a daily cyclist, but also I like to be outside and do some sports. And as I said, I'm working as a director of a consultancy, Traject. At the moment, we are 30 people, offices in Ghent and Brussels, and we advise public authorities, cities, also corporates, big companies in getting more efficient and more sustainable mobility. We were involved in European projects like Civitas, where we are advising the city of Antwerp. But if you want to have some more background on myself or on Traject, go and have a look at our website. So as I said, it's a pleasure to share some of our thoughts and experiences with mobility plans, sustainable urban mobility plans, and especially focus on circulation plans. I'd like to start with an image which is probably a little bit weird in a mobility context, but for me, working on mobility, on urban mobility, it exists of different blocks. This is a picture, I guess, of the US Navy, all different pieces, different ships, but they're all going in one direction. And that's for me, when we're talking about urban mobility planning, SUMPs, an important issue. Everyone knows what's SUMP, but personally, sustainable urban mobility plans, personally, I don't like to use the word plan. I prefer to talk about policies, sustainable urban mobility policies, or even strategies. And you will see the example of Ghent will show you what, let's say, the different level where you work on urban mobility planning. So a SUMP or strategy is the overall approach. And the focus of today, circulation plan, it's one of the possible, potential elements to achieve the target of having a more sustainable urban mobility issues. So SUMP, is it important? Yes, it is. And a circulation plan, is it a good thing? Of course, it can be interesting, but it's only one of the elements. So I want, before jumping into the case of Ghent, I want to stress that for me, the strategy, not the plan itself, but the mobility strategy is important. And even a step further, mobility shouldn't be too important. It should be about the urban strategy. What kind of general strategy do you want for your city? Do you want a city with only cars, or do you want a city where life is nice, where people like to shop, to hang around? I'm sure, and I know we already visited one of the presentations or gave one of the presentations on the same topic in Ljubljana a couple of years ago. You know Jan Geel from Copenhagen, Cities for the People, give the city back to the people. So that's an urban strategy. And that's also something that's typical for the way the city of Ghent deals with urban mobility. So I show you some pictures, some approaches from Ghent. My Slovenian is not too good. Your Flemish is also not perfect, but this is the baseline of the city of Ghent. It's quite simple. Ghent, zoveel stad. Ghent, so much city. Ghent is a city with 250,000 inhabitants, so it's a medium, small city, even on European level, a little bit like Ljubljana. And that's also from several studies, in fact, the perfect size of cities, because you have a lot of advantages of having a bigger city, good leisure possibilities, cultural offer, and so on. So that's what Ghent wanted to do, bring city life to the people and show that this city is much more than some stones and bricks, but people are living there and people like to come and visit. I can't tell you a lot of words, but some pictures are always more stronger than whatever words you can say. These are some pictures from Ghent in the 70s. All the nice spots, and also quite similar in Ljubljana, were just open parking spaces. Now you see it's instead of cars, you have a lot of people hanging around, having a drink. It's of course pre-corona pictures, but even now you see that open streets, people like to hang around. Ghent is a medieval town, so not too much space, small streets. So they had to be to make choices to be made. You have a picture on the right-hand side of the situation was before the mobility plan. Cars were stuck, tramways were stuck, buses were stuck in traffic. So in fact, the city, and that's probably already one of the important messages of today, don't hesitate to use marketing to show the impact of mobility issues. You see back to postcard for Ghent, maybe something that it's a small thing, but before the circulation plan, they had a lot of work in renovating all the churches, and they were black from all the exhausting fumes of the cars. After the circulation plan, the city, the buildings, the cathedral still looks like it was built, I would say. So these are some of the small extra advantages of having less cars in the city. But as I said, the mobility plan, the circulation plan, the aim is not to get rid of the cars. No, it's a positive story. It's to create meeting places, to create spots where people can meet again, hang around, and still have accessibility in the city. And this was one of the main fights, I would say, that has been done the last decades. It was a parking really in the middle of the city center, and now it's a nice spot, nice park to hang around. So nice pictures, but of course, this is not something that has been done one day on the other. So there's a whole process after it, which I would like to share with you the next minutes. In fact, if you ask the city of Ghent, when did you finalize your SUMP? I know a lot of people couldn't give an exact answer. As I said, it's not about the plan, because plans on paper. It's about a strategy, a policy that's for a couple of years, even decades running. In fact, Ghent started mid of the 90s with a cycle plan, just describing which should be the main cycle routes through the city. They designed 8 main tracks, I would say, or main roads where cities could, where cyclists could enter the city. Well, these 8 cycling routes are still existent. They are not perfect. We are not like in the Netherlands where everything is spick and span. No, it's really work in progress. But this was, let's say, the first planning instrument which decided or which showed which way Ghent could work on improving the city life. In '97, there was a first, let's say, smaller circulation plan for a couple of streets. But the main jump forward, because traffic congestion was getting worse, happened in 2015, 2016, where in fact something like SUMP was developed, but on a strategical level. So that's an important one. The city described what they wanted to do with the city itself. The strategy, which I'll show you later on, was the main document which was produced. And then the other elements, I would even say the operations, parking plan and a circulation plan followed in 2016, 2017. Working on mobility, we always are asked what are the effects of the actions you consider. Well, Ghent put a lot of effort in measuring and monitoring. And that's also an interesting lesson. Just measure, try to objectivize things you are doing. And of course, modal splits, it's one of the main indicators on having a more sustainable accessibility of your city. The end of the 90s, the figures in Ghent were like in a lot of cities, most of the people use the car, and this is the modal split of people living and working in Ghent, so moving towards and living in the city of Ghent. So 60% of all the trips were done by car. In 2015, so at the moment of, let's say, introducing the SUMP, but before the circulation plan, half of the trips were still done by car. Bike was already at 30%, so this was quite a high number. Ghent is also a student town, university town, so there are a lot of students using a bicycle. But even then, it's a huge number. And that's important. After the circulation plan, the use of car decreased to 39%, cycling went up to 33%, and public transport, as you can see, it also gained some percentage. On food, more or less the same. Some people, because cycling become more attractive, use the bike instead of walking. I was involved in the development of the sustainable urban mobility strategy of the city of Ghent. And of course, in 2015, we made some targets, some estimations, and that's the figures which, the target which we proposed to the local authorities in 2015. So this was on this level, where we said, look, we can probably aim at decreasing the number of cars to more or less 30%, and numbers of bikes to 35%. At the moment, of course, last months are a special situation, but nevertheless, cycling is around 35–40%. So in fact, at the moment of the urban mobility strategy, the strong targets, the ambitious targets is already being reached, let's say probably 10 years before the deadline of 2030. So these are some figures, but I give you, of course, some more detailed figures on the circulation plan later on in this presentation. So let's focus on the circulation plan. I thought it's interesting to have the overall view to start with, but now the circulation plan itself. This was implemented in April 2017. And these are two aldermen of the city of Ghent. The person on the right hand, it's Philippe Watteeuw. He's the founding father of the mobility strategy and of the circulation plan. He's from the Green Party. But the person on the left hand side, for me, is but is as important as the Green alderman. She's from what we call in Belgium the Liberal Party, but liberal in the Liberal Party in Belgium, it's more center or even right wing. Economical issues are their target. And for me, that's one of the, let's say, the successes of the approach in Ghent, that you had a very good balance between economy and, let's say, ecology. Of course, it's more than ecology, but that it's not only something that's sustainable and normal, I would say, for green aldermen, but that also the coalition partner, the more right-wing oriented party focusing on economical issues, was also behind and was also in favor of this plan. Our major is also from the Liberal Party. He's a great defender of the mobility plan. Are there no discussions between the politicians? Of course there are. Like everywhere, there's always, let's say, a little fight, but they managed to get it more or less out the newspapers, but in the inner rooms of the town hall. So they decided, they did the discussions and modifications, but at the end, it came out to the public with a really strong and supported plan. And this meant that after the first critics from, let's say, shop owners, companies, or whatever, that they could stay, let's wait. We all agreed upon, let's first wait for a couple of months to see if things will arrange. So that's, let's say, an advantage, a political situation which is stable and where different parties try to reach the same aim. These are some figures showing the situation in Ghent before the circulation plan. I'll show you a map of Ghent later on, but you saw that the city got a lot of problems with, this is the outer ring road, but people, car drivers who choose to go through the city center to reach the destination, only 50% of all the car traffic passing through the city center really at the destination in this city center. So in fact, in one baseline, there was too much motorized traffic in the city center, which had no added value, I would say, for the city center itself. So was it the aim of Ghent to get rid of the cars? No. This is, let's say, an official presentation also from the city of Ghent. They wanted to increase accessibility for all modes, including the car. But the main driver for the mobility plan was to increase livability. Livability for the inhabitants, livability for the people who come to shop, to visit the town, for people who come to shop in town. So increase livability by keeping motorized transit traffic out of city center. In the 90s, Ghent made the same mistake like most all other cities in Europe. They built a lot of underground parkings in the city center, really close to the main center. So the parking, the garages are still there, and they are still accessible. So to go by car to Ghent, you can still access. You can come by car, but you have to park, of course, in the underground parkings. But going through the city center, that's forbidden. I can show you on the map. So again, I think Belgium and especially Ghent, I hope at least, is an inspiring example, because also the radius of the city, it's like some of your cities. This is the real city center where the first circulation plan happened, but it is really small. This is the ring road in Ghent. And so the scale or the radius from one side to the other, it's only 3 kilometers. So, and the concept of the circulation plan, as you saw before, so this is, let's say, the inner circle in the graph. The orange one is here. So cars could just go to the city center and find their way through the historical center. In the circulation plan, it's really blocked. So if you want to go from one side of the city to the other, you have to use the ring road, and then you enter on the segment where you have to be. This is another explanation of the topic. So this is the outer ring road. So in fact, someone living here and wanted to go to a shop over there. In the past, this car driver just went through the city center to the shop over there. After the circulation plan, so since 2017, a car can choose the shortest way, this way probably, and then enter the city, go back to this place. So that's the concept behind the circulation plan. And what's important, and this took a lot of effort, as I said, marketing is important. It was not, Ghent will be inaccessible for cars. No, every spot in Ghent was in the same way accessible by cars. The only thing, I would say, the mental shift that people had to make, instead of taking the short way to the city center, you had to, let's say, reflect a little bit, know, okay, I have to follow the ring road, and then I enter the segment where I have to be. And of course, and this was why I really appreciated that the two political parties, they just shared the same message. You're still welcome in Ghent if you come by car, but you have to just choose which entry is the most fit for your trip. So of course, human beings are weak and looking for the simple solution. So there need to be some measures which block, of course, the going through traffic. Also there, it's kind of wording. If you talk about cuts of traffic, we prefer to use the word filter because it's a cut. Car drivers could not enter this place, but pedestrians, cyclists, public transport, people living in town, disabled people were still able to pass. So the word cut, it's quite strong, and it really literally, it means there is no way through. I don't know if filter has a good translation in Slovenian, but it has another meaning. It still shows we are accessible, but please, car driver, use the appropriate entry to enter the town. So there were some blocks, some paints, some signs, of course, and NPR cameras which scan the license plate and can find. It's also at your side. But was also interesting, it was not only blocking the roads, it was immediately trying to give something in return, be it plants, but also benches, bicycle parking. And I remember the 2nd of April 2017, the day the circulation plan was launched. I jumped on my bike to check things out, and immediately spaces which were used by cars, like this one, people were hanging around, were sitting on the benches. So life was back in the city, I would say. So of course, there are a lot of people who still need their car, as I said, disabled people, but also inhabitants. If you live in the city center, you have a car and a garage, you're still allowed to pass. Also, emergencies, maintenance workers, they get a special license, they get a permit, they can ride through the blocks. So, but there is strict supervision and a fine, 58 euros in case you pass through the blocks. It's also an important lesson, not only blocking the road, but give space back to people, space to sit, to eat, temporary spaces, which can be moved from one place to another. So give the place back to the people. Some nice elements, even some play. There's like a bicycle circuit, which was just put in place. So people, especially families, immediately, let's say, conquered the free space which was taken away from cars and given back to the people. And this is, I was lucky to be able to visit Ljubljana a couple of times. Also there, a lot of nice terraces to have a good coffee, have a good beer. Also in Ghent. New pedestrian areas, car-free streets, and you have to be a little bit lucky with the weather, but I remember the first day of the circulation plan, it even rained, and then people were like happy that they could go back outside. So this is, I would say, maybe a nice story, but also important to find the good balance. And as you know, in a lot of cities, again, 35, maybe 40% of the trips are done by bikes, but still, this is not a cycling plan. The aim is not to have half the population on the bikes. No, the aim is to have a nicer, a more livable city. So sometimes, and for green aldermen, that is not always easy, But sometimes you have to take measures, let's say, against cyclists. Like in the main shopping streets, there were too much people. So if cyclists also mixed up with pedestrians, there was like, some possible problems. So Ghent decided that for some shopping streets, it's even forbidden to bike between busy hours. So try to find a balance, try to avoid to get the blame of having an anti-car plan. So take the appropriate measures and don't hesitate if it's useful, if it's needed, to also take measures which are not always in favor of cyclists or probably even public transport. So of course, are there any results? Yes, there are. The city, that's also an important message. They monitored and measured from the beginning. So it was not a jump into some unknown spaces. So they wanted really to collect data to show figures that what they are doing was really happening. And the main indicators they used was first modal shift, livability, and accessibility. Because of course, Ghent, like other cities, they want to become more sustainable, but they want, of course, to be economically attractive, to have a lot of shops, to have companies, to have people working in the city. What was the direct impact of the circulation plan? You saw the numbers of cyclists was really increasing, plus 25% in the city center and 35% from the outskirts to the city center. Maybe the first ones, there was a shift from pedestrians to cyclists, but especially this one, where a lot of people before driving by car, moving to cycling. Public transport may be important also for cycling, except from very, very small improvements. Cycling infrastructure didn't improve at the moment of implementing the circulation plan. So it was just by giving the space which was used by cars back to cyclists that managed to get more people biking. So public transport also there, because, and I won't go into details because Belgium, it's a really complicated country with the federal government and regional government, but just to summarize, the city of Ghent has no authority on the public transport because that's on the Flemish, on the regional level. So even if Ghent implemented a sustainable mobility policy, they got no extra money for improving public transport. But public transport, by the fact that it was not stuck in traffic, got better frequency, got a better more fluently service. So the number of public transport users increased. And walking, well, not really a shift in walking. And what we saw, and that's again, when I talk about strategy, it's not enough to have a plan, implement it, and let things happen. No, you have, I would even say, on a daily basis, follow up, look at your target, and take the necessary measures which are needed. So Ghent wanted to have more people out of the car and on the bike. Well, there was a great need for bicycle parking, and it still is. It's impressive. I think at the station now, when I was young and I studied in Ghent 30 years ago, there were like 800 bicycle racks at the main station in Ghent. It increased to 2,000, 4,000, 6,000, and now the aim is to have 20,000 of bicycle parkings at the station, and it's still not enough. So if you build it, they will come. It's for asphalt and for cars, but it's also working for cyclists. Livability, it's of course more complicated to measure livability because that's a qualitative, subjective feeling. But you can try to measure it, like air quality improved by 30%. People, as I said, people went back on the streets, so people like to live in Ghent, like to work in Ghent, so that's very difficult to put it in figures, but I remember there was like a survey and I think 60% of the respondees said that the circulation plan was a very good measure. And what's impressive, from the transit traffic, I remember the graph I showed, 60% of the transit traffic just faded away. So as you know, sometimes people compare car traffic with water. It will always find its way. The better comparison is to compare car traffic with gas. If you give it space, it will take the volume. If you narrow the space, some will evaporate even. And I think like 40% of the car traffic in the city center just evaporated. Because people made less trips by car, but mainly they choose to do it by cycling. Remember the picture in the past, you can go through the city center. Now you had to go to one of the entries and then enter the city. And just from a mental point of view, it's shorter to jump on your bike or sometimes even to walk than to take your car. And as the space is given back to cyclists, it's getting attractive and people start cycling. And what's even more impressive is that the travel time for car drivers, it improved. Travel time from the outskirts to the city center, to one of the garages, it decreased with 35%. So this means, and I have some family members who will never bike and who were complaining at the beginning, we come by car and it will be a disaster and so on. They are happy now because they can even go to the shops where they went before on the condition that they choose the right entry. So travel time to the city center was even better than before. Of course, it's logic. A part of the cars just used, this was also the objective, the ring road where traffic time increased. The city calculated the impact on beforehand if there would have been more cars on the ring road, and they adapted the traffic lights so that the car use on the ring road was a little bit more fluid. So as I said, it's a comprehensive plan. In the city center, give a high priority to pedestrians, cyclists, public transport, and the car, let's say it's on the last position. On the ring road, you facilitate the circulation of the cars in order to, let's say that have a buy-in also from the car drivers on this. So longer distances but shorter travel, that's also a baseline you can use. And of course, for the cyclists, as I said, there was not really a lot of infrastructure improvements. This is really the picture. It's at the same spot, maybe different weather, but this is the same spot. And this is one of the blocks. This was a main entrance road to the city center of Ghent. They cut it overnight, but as you see, they put some nice benches. There is also a French fries bar, and the only infrastructure for cyclists was just some painting on the ground and just giving back the asphalt to cyclists. And cyclists enjoy, it's safer, it's more pleasant, it's about experience. If you bike to the city center and you don't have all the noises from cars, that's a good point. So that were some pictures. And what about the shops? I'm sure in Slovenia it will be the same discussion. Shops will break down, will go bankrupt if you work on sustainable mobility. Well, that's not a fact. It is in Dutch, but it means the new evaluation of the new circulation plan shows there is a positive impact on the shops in Ghent. So shop owners, as everywhere, were afraid what will happen. As I said, the message was it's still accessible by car, but we invest in bicycle parking. And there is a lot, it's of course in Dutch, but there are big reports, evaluation reports on the effects of circulation plans with a lot of figures. And one of the graphs I used, maybe small figures, but this is the growth of hotels, restaurants and pubs, but also of shops, of commerce in Ghent between 2017, introduction of the circulation plan, and 2018, 1 year later. And you saw that the number of starters, so new shops opening in Ghent, it increased. New people opened shops in Ghent. And this is the number of shops who went bankrupt in the same year. So in 2017, there were, before circulation plan, there were more bankruptcies than in 2018. And there is a new evaluation this year, but my personal experience when I walk around town, even streets, which used to have a lot of empty shops, are now getting new life, new atmosphere. Of course, you see a shift. You see some, let's say, there was one car tire company in the city center. It used to be there from the 70s. For this, if you're not too accessible for cars, yeah, it's a pity, but then you have to move to the outskirts of town. The shops who broke down or went outside Ghent, they often blame it on the circulation plan. But if you go a little bit more in the details, and that's also a suggestion I would give, in Belgium, I guess in Slovenia is the same, the figures of bigger companies are public, so you can go and check the figures of companies, and those who left by companies already got some problems before the circulation plan. And you have, of course, the general impact of online shopping, so avoid to get the blame on circulation plan. The alderman who took the initiative to introduce the mobility strategy and the circulation plan, well, they were really rewarded, and also important, he was re-elected. So a lot of people said at the beginning, yes, this will be his last and final public action, but he got a lot of, I think he got an increase of 5% or 10% of votes. So people, even people who were against the plan, they had to admit after a couple of years, also there, the suggestion not only for Ghent, but from other cities, do it at the start of a coalition. Don't do it in the last year of before the elections, but do it at the start, so people have the time to feel the advantages of these measures. And it's nice to see that the example of Ghent is really a good inspiration, especially from some UK cities came and visit Ghent, like Birmingham will copy the aspect that Ghent introduced. Also Newcastle. So, and for local aldermen, it's nice, and critics just slow down if they see that bigger cities like Birmingham and also quite recently Newcastle, they want to inspire the sustainable urban mobility policy on circulation plan that's been done in Ghent. So this is also, I would say, one of the evaluations which are important to show. So I see that my time is up, but I would like to share you as a consultant, as mobility consultant, but also as an inhabitant of Ghent and as an advisor to the city, my personal takeaways and some suggestions for you in your daily work on mobility. So my personal takeaways is I started a circulation plan or even a SUMP. It's no aim in itself. Mobility shouldn't be too important. It should be about having a nicer city, and a circulation plan. It's one of the elements, maybe not to copy for every city, but if it's the case, it's a good element to achieve the overall goal. So go for a higher strategy and always reflect to this strategy. Why are we making a roadblock over here? Well, it's not to be annoyance for the car drivers. It's to create a more livable city, to give space back to the city. So always have, first of all, have this higher strategy, and you can always reflect to this strategy. Let people feel the advantages. So give them space back at the playground, the benches, the plants, that people just feel that the city is a nice place to be if there are no cars all the time around. So let them feel the advantages, and then you will be rewarded at the end. Also important, avoid to go into ideological discussions. For a green alderman, it's normal, or at least people suppose it's normal, that he will be in favor of cyclists, but go with real figures, monitor and adapt. Will shops go down? I'll monitor it. If it's necessary, adapt, but show the figures, objectivize the discussion. And of course, participation, it's important, but for me, political courage, it's also an important one. So as an alderman, you need to have some balls, I would say, or at least some courage to show us that's the direction we're going to take. Believe me, in a couple of months, you will feel the difference, but ask people's advice. But as a politician, it's your duty to run a policy. So go for it and keep this political courage. So that was my story. I hope it was inspirational for you. And okay, from my side as a consultant, as an inhabitant, but don't hesitate to contact me if you want to get in touch with politicians or with people from the mobility department of Ghent. They will be very happy to share their thoughts and their experience.
Yeah, Vincent,
so thanks for the
dank u zeer voor de postcard.
Met plezier.